Hey yo, what it did, y'all? Let's get right into it. Torchlight Season 6 has been going for like 9, 10 days at this point, and I have played a ton of it, which means I have a ton of thoughts. And that's what we're going to do here today. We're going to talk about the season and how it's drastically improved the game at a core level. I think there's a lot to talk about in terms of improvements to Torchlight Infinite as a real game instead of just a mobile game version of Diablo 3. It now feels like it actually belongs in the conversation with actual ARPGs, ignoring the size thing, right? It is still a fairly small game. You know, it's only got like, I think it only peaked at around like 12,000 players in the West in particular, at least on Steam. No idea what mobile numbers are like. No idea what China numbers are like, for example. But I know over here, 12K players is still not a whole lot in the scheme of things. But, you know, I was playing PoE back when it was only 8 to 12K players on Steam, right? So there's clearly promise here, and the system that they've put together very much hammer that point home, especially because this is the season patch that lays the framework per Andre there, Western CM. And they talked about how they're looking to have this be the last major game overhaul patch. Not that they're not going to be rebalancing and redesigning things ever again, but more so you won't load in between seasons and have the entire game change on you, right? It won't be another full crafting overhaul with another full hero overhaul with another full mapping overhaul. It'll just be maybe one of those aspects gets a light rework and then some balancing elsewhere. At least that's my interpretation of what was said in that campfire chat, right? Which would mean that, you know, the idea of permanence in understanding of the game is going to get better, which means that, you know, it'll be easier to talk about the game going forward when we actually have meaningful points of comparison as we look back over the seasons. And I think that's an incredible boon for the game's playability, as well as our ability to actually talk about the game and give meaningful opinions, because now we're no longer giving feedback on things that are just going to be changed massively in the next 2 months. Instead, it'll be giving feedback on something that will still exist, but, you know, hopefully in a way that reflects from the feedback that we give. Now, before I get too deep into all this, just a quick reminder, you know, like, comment, subscribe if you find this video particularly helpful, or if you just want to, you know, boost this video out there, maybe even XD will see it and they'll get some of the improvements in here that I suggest into the game. Now, we need to start with this understanding that since everything is evergreen, allegedly, right, I wanted to start by talking about gear, because this is, I think, the place they made the biggest strides and improvements in. Gear feels incredible right now. 3 complaints, but we'll get to those in a bit. I think overall, the idea of having everything actually matter as you go up through tiers, and the combination system of looting where the loot scales up in the quote quality of what you drop, or quantity of what you drop as you go up, is very important, because you actually have a use for, say, flame sand. You don't just outrun flame sand, and nor are you competing with people who are more productive than you for flame sand. These are both very important aspects, right? When you are trying to get to time arc 8, flame sand is your homie. You farm flame sand, you buy flame sand, you craft your gear up to T2, and you've gotten yourself your character ready to go to T8s, right? That feels really, really good. Then after you've done your gear, you look over and you go, I have no candles. I need to get myself 2 half decent candles real quick. I might not go super hard on it yet, because I'm not doing eternal reservations if you're in SSF, or you're not just buying the expensive candles if you're in trade yet, but you can get yourself some decent ones that maybe give you some res, some damage, maybe some movement speed, some attack or cast speed, right? Like something light to get yourself, you know, get yourself through a little bit, right? Then you go into your slates, where again, you don't have the insane slates that are 2, 3, maybe even 4 legendary medium talents. You might not even have a pedigree yet, but at least you're going to roughly like 70 to 80% DPS increase off of just getting decent slates, right? You're going to get yourself some nice slates with all purple mods on it that just give you a ton of attack and cast speed, percent damage. Maybe you get like one nice defensive node in there that just kind of helps you shore up your resistances, etc. Then you go over and look at your hero memories and you go, oh, right, I don't have level 30 hero memories yet to upgrade my traits. So I can get that, and maybe I'll roll a stat on one of those to see if I can get the right substats there as well to help out my damage just a little bit more before I go into T8s, right? Then you go into T8s and you do a whole sweep across your character again. Gear to T1, better candles, better slates, better memories. Then you do it again. Better gear, better memories, better candles, better slates. The idea of actually having a whole system of gear to constantly sweep through Feels really good. I'm a very big fan of it. Now, I did say I have some complaints. Number one is flame sand. For as good as flame sand feels when you're in initial progression, getting your way to T8s, it is entirely pointless afterwards. And I mean entirely pointless. Like, not like, oh, kind of pointless. No, I mean actually pointless. You get to T8s, and let's say you're not fully T2'd when you get to T8s. So you get a little bit of flame sand you get some flame sand still while you're in T8s, quite a lot of it actually. And then you can use that to finish T2ing your gear out. Maybe you even like have a stockpile of flame sand prepared for and a reroll, because maybe you've decided you want to try something else. That's perfectly fine. Now, why in Profound Time Arc 8 am I still dropping Flame Sand? I literally can't use it. No gear that can be upgraded by Flame Sand at all, like, oh, hear me on this, at all, can be used in Profound Time Arc 8 because of how hard that content is. Like, your gear just kind of needs to be better. That, or you've already made it from going into T8s, right? Because like I still had like my rings that were T2'd when I went into Profound 8s, but they were already full T2. So what do I need the Flame Sand for? It's just polluting my inventory space. It's dropping a currency I don't need. Something needs to be done in this particular aspect of the gearing cycle. Either make flame sand relevant later on, or straight up just nuke it as a drop so it doesn't just like be extremely wasteful in Profound T8s, like taking up space and forcing me to filter it out. Like, there's a way to handle that. Not exactly sure the detail, right? Just thinking about like the actual problem that I've identified so that, the actual developers and designers can take care of the problem itself. 2, in a similar vein to this, we've talked about cost of crafting. I do think priceless items are absurdly priced. It's very ironic, right? Priceless, high costing. Yeah, they are. Priceless items are really, really, really expensive to craft on. And this isn't even like just from a trade perspective. This is just thinking about the actual raw materials that it takes. Ultimate modifiers are very, very build enabling in a lot of cases. Build enabling are extremely build enhancing, far more powerful than regular stats. They moved a lot of the actually good unique stats into ultimate modifiers. And I think while intrinsically not a throw because your character doesn't need those stats until this point in the game anyways, I think the problem I have with the way that they're handled right now is specifically the amount of FE and embers it takes to roll, right? Rolling ultimate modifiers and it taking 30 FE per click is a little excessive, at least relative to the amount of raw FE that actually drops. Like if we didn't have this league mechanic, the painted canvas, the frozen canvas carrying our FE, I think we would see a lot more complaints about this particular aspect of crafting. Also, people would have to actually get up here. That's a thing for a different part of the video. But like that, the ultimate gear crafting part is a little rough around the edges. But again, that's a numbers thing. I don't think it's like the idea is flawed. I just think, numbers on the crafting costs, maybe even a place to potentially reincorporate flame sand, for example, right? I don't know. Just putting it out there, the costs feel a little excessive. Like full days, like hours of grinding to get one piece upgraded in trade is a lot, and that's concerning because I don't even want to think about what that would be like for me at SSF, for example. Even with the new 100-fold windfall card they added to like glacial waste for farming purposes, right? It just doesn't sound like a good gameplay balance to me. 3 is that I still don't particularly love the crafting system from the perspective of being an item printer, but I think it fits the game well. So I'm going to allow it. It's just me noting I still don't love the idea of quote failless crafting, but it kind of checks out if the fail just means that you have to go farm a shitload more FE and ultimate embers or whatever, right? That's okay with me. It's just something I'm still not the biggest fan of, but I have a lot less complaints about it than I did initially. So that's gear. Directly tied to gears, we should definitely talk about the difficulty of the game right now, because it is hard. Very much a juxtaposition from what we had going in to the season. Like season 5 was an extremely easy season to play in by comparison to this season. And I think it's fine that the game got this hard. I actually like the fact that the game is this hard and it's requiring me to work this hard to keep up and go forward and go beyond. It was just a bit of a shock. And so my statement here is that the difficulty is good. If you're hearing people complaining about it, it's not all dismissible complaints. It's not like, people who wanted this game to stay easier or be not quite this hard are unjust in their complaints. It's just that I think right now everybody is still quite frankly in a state of shock about how much harder the game became. Again, that's fine. I like it harder, this personally speaking, but I understand people who don't. I have a couple specific topics about the difficulty though, which is one, the jumps feel a little ridiculous. Specifically, the offsets 1 and 2 do not feel rewarding enough for their difficulty jump relative to their base level. So 7-0 versus 7-1-7-2 and 8-0 versus 8-1-8-2. Neither one of the offsets, 8-1-8-2 for example, feel as good as the base time mark 8-0. Like it feels too much like it gained too much difficulty for too little reward. Comparatively to the actual jumps between the raw time marks, it just something didn't feel right there. They're good testing grounds to see if your character is like almost ready to go up though. They just don't scale the drops hard enough, and I'm not really sure how to solve that. Again, that's for them to figure out. I'm just giving my feedback. Now, the jumps between tiers themselves, I think, are for the most part fine. I would look at considering an adjustment to Profound Time Mark 8 to Deep Space potentially. I'm not in Deep Space personally. My current character is in Profound just because I need a lot more time to farm out more gear. Can definitely get to Deep Space. I haven't had the time. The character is only like 4 or 5 days old at this point, and so I need a lot more time to like grind up and get it there. But the actual gap going into Deep Space is pretty egregious. And it's very, very unapproachable to say the very least, right? It's going to take a lot of grinding to get there. Maybe I'll have an updated opinion on this towards like later into the season when PoE hype dies down a little bit and whatnot, and I have time to like give a full analysis on how I feel like going into Deep Space. But that's just like my initial thoughts from what I've seen of other people getting their characters geared and ready for Deep Space. That difficulty part is excessive, and related to excessive difficulty is Supreme Showdown. That content is way too hard to fulfill the idea that they proposed to us with what it was supposed to be, right? It is meant to be an end game challenge, and I accept that wholeheartedly. I love that part of it. But they also talked about it being a way to get your hands on old legendary pack spirits when you get boss 20 down. And when I had last checked, which was not before making this video, by the way, it was maybe like a day before, so potentially this has changed by now. There had yet to be an America kill of the 20th boss of Supreme Showdown. And the characters that were at 18 and 19 were insanely well geared. So I think you can understand my concern there a little bit, right? Like that's more what I'm thinking about. And especially because as the difficulty scales in this way, it definitely starts to hit itself into more of a killer be kill type of scenario where the people who are progressing these things, whether it be the maps, right? Profound Time Mark 8 into Deep Space or the Supreme Showdown, it does feel like everybody is just going hyper glass cannon instead of making characters that will actually feel good to play overall. And that's fine for progression purposes, but I am hoping that, you know, with some tuning down the line, that will get taken care of. Okay. 2 more system things to talk about, right? Like I said, there was a lot of changes that happened this season. Let's talk about hero traits, because I've now played 3 different heroes, right? You saw me early season play Erica 2. I made the video about my Selena, and what you're seeing in the background now is likely at some point going to have been Youga 1 footage that I'll talk about the character later on in this video. And my experience with hero traits in the hero memory system is very interesting. I think the memory system is actually very good. I think it's very well designed. I am a little sad about the removal of character specific stats on memories. Like I did enjoy, for example, scaling my shock settling, like the amount of shock settles I got on Feline Figure playing Erica 2 last season. But I think it's better overall for the system, the ecosystem of the game, for the stats on memories to be more unified rather than so many character specific stats existing. The corollary to this, though, is that I don't know if I think the hero traits themselves feel unique enough, or in the case of Erica 2, worth it enough to exist. Erica 2 having hero traits that just don't work on bosses is absurd to me. And I think that should definitely have been addressed before the launch of the season. I think that Selena's optimal path feels very scripted, and that her other path feels unplayable just because of the way that the character is designed. And that doesn't feel too good either to me. As well as, you know, I mean, Youga 1 luckily still has the variety available, but I don't feel like I'm getting it. Like, it doesn't feel, basically, I feel like the uniqueness of the hero memory system, or the hero trait system, my bad, got squished into the base part of it, right? Where it's like, Much like in PoE, you are playing a Pathfinder, you are playing a Warden, you are playing an Elementalist. That's how I feel like. I feel like I am playing an Erica 2. I am playing a Youga. I am playing a Selena, but I don't have the same methods of actually scaling the Youga aspects of the character, right? Like the Youga stat scaling being missing feels bad outside of like, levels on your traits from having leveled up memory or being lucky and getting a +2 hero trait roll on a memory. Like outside of stuff like that, it's not there in that regard. But otherwise, I think the system is fantastic. And then my third point of like, hey, something that definitely should be talked about is actually path of progression and how good it is. The path of progression is really good for the game. I love the design of the system. I think my understanding of it is that it is just meant to like persist between seasons. It is meant to be used as a heavily guided tutorial through a lot of the content in the game, just so you can see how many things there are to offer, as well as getting you used to taking all the various actions needed to upgrade your character. I think that's very well designed, very well put together. The buffs for it feel very good. It's going to take a lot of time to get them. One small complaint about the path of progression is literally just the fact that there's a lot of things that don't count retroactively, which is really annoying that some of it doesn't count retroactively because of the like cost, investment, time, etc. needed to do them, such as having to re-kill Great Void bosses or having to redo Path of the Brave or just having to like waste energy cores on energizing things, as well as just the delay on certain things being registered. I assume has to do with like game infrastructure and whatnot. Well, or like the target dummy checks. The target dummy survival check is so cringe because it's a fake stat relative to your ability to actually live in a map because it doesn't account for so many defensive stats in the game, etc. Little shit like that. It bothers me about the path of progression, but the actual system itself and the idea and what it does feels great, especially the buffs that are meant to help bridge the gap between players who do have drop pets and players who don't have drop pets. And you'll notice I didn't talk too much about like anything else in the like drop pet regard because I don't think it's a system worth talking about in a lot of discussions about this game. There are obviously advantages to people who have drop pets, but between a system that is admittedly too hard at the moment to get old drop pets, as well as a system to actually, pull the new ones that exist, because the new one is always super strong anyways. Like the Rainbow Paint Owl feels incredible to have. Like outside of stuff like that, I think there's a lot more value in just having like generically decent little ones, which you will get over time just from playing the game. And for the most part, you're not going to like if you're getting gapped in currency per hour, it's usually not because of the pet, and nor do the mechanics really like coalesce their price around the motherfuckers who have the pets. They are affected by that, but it's not a large enough portion of the people doing the mechanic to completely cook your prices. Okay. Ooh, God, that's a lot of thoughts about the game, right? Now, some thoughts about the elite mechanic itself, because I actually really like the frozen canvas, which I keep this one short and sweet. I like the idea, especially because I feel like it's what like a Calandra could have been. It's a lot more, it actually makes use of the system a lot better in terms of the ways to interact with the board. Playing the board is fun. Getting fucked over by the board, not so fun, but it is what it is. That's what happens when you play puzzle games. I very much have enjoyed the like puzzle aspect of it. The, progression tree was pretty light and easy to get through. The actual like content itself is pretty nice and smooth. It's a nice environment. You just run around, either get auto completions from the node or kill a pack of about like 20 to 80 things, depending, or, a couple bosses here or there, collect a lot of loot. It's a nice play loop. It's like I said, Calandra could have felt like this. The difficulty in Calandra could have just not been nuclear, and the rewards could have just launched good, and we would have been in a much better place with how we referred to the Calandra League. Also, I find it very helpful that the canvas does not require me to interrupt my flow every single map. It is just accumulate a currency over the course of some maps to be able to do it. And I think that is much, much better. One small feedback point is to definitely check your localization work, XD, on making sure that you actually have full requirements displayed on the screen. There were some instances from the start of the season when my friends and I would like find out the hard way that we can't actually do the snow paper that we tried to open up that we unlocked, because it'd be like, oh yeah, I finished the purple snow paper, I'm going to go do orange snow paper. And you can't actually read how far down the line in the time mark system it's supposed to be off of that first screen. And it's like, oh, surprise, it's actually for T8 or T7s. Wait, or by that, yeah, T8's orange is T8. It's like, oh, wait a minute, I'm not in T8s, I'm only in T7s. Fuck. right? Like little shit like that definitely needs to be worked on. But again, small things and like honestly an inconsequential problem because of how much no paper fragments we actually get from mapping. Okay. All thoughts on the season aside, I think the game is in a fantastic state right now. Like I said, I'm very much happy that I got a PoE level experience out of it and that, it's still ongoing, right? I might not be playing as much this week in particular, just to give my body some time to relax and rest to prepare for the upcoming Settlers reboot that's happening. But outside of that, like I would be playing so much more because it is just like been that much fun. The characters I played have been fun. The grind for progression and the constantly having a goal that moves the post higher and higher and really having incentive to reach higher and higher into the game's damage scaling is incredible, which I know is a turnoff for some people right now, but I think that gets better over time, not this season, but like in future seasons, as more creators are able to actually make evergreen content guides, as opposed to, for example, having to do what Coffee Beans does. Love his content, by the way, where he just has a bunch of like low investment characters that are quick and ready to go each season because of how much work it previously took to have any sort of like back traceable information about a character. So I'm hoping that, going forward, I can say, point back to my Selena guide and be like, the patches are going to change Icebound Beam Selena in these ways, but you can probably get around it with other things, like I did at the start of this season with the Hexflash Trickster, right? And how I would update it based off of nerfs and changes that happened in the 325 patch notes. That's hopefully the future that builds in Torchlight Infinite are going. Now, to quickly talk about the character you've been watching the whole time, and I will put a build code in the description so you can see my character at the time. I will tell you right now, the character looks like an Unobtainium because he's been farming for days. It is currently pulling between 22 and 25 billion DPS on the dummy with loot pets on. With my DPS pets, I don't have the greatest DPS pets for this build. It's closer to the ballpark of about 45 billion DPS. So still not an absolute crap ton. There are definitely people doing better damage to me, but that's just because I've been busy. And I played a couple other characters, but the gear on him is not too hard to get. You do just have to, again, like I said, work your way through the upgrade chain. The big things being, if you're going to play this character, that you can do either a wilt version to get started, or personally, I played hit straight to cold conversion immediately using oversights as my weapon. That weapon is incredible, and you can pair it with other things to help like get your scaling going earlier on. Then transitioning the character into the proper form that I'm in now, where it's low life now through Undying Faith. Worth noting, when you're not low life, compensatory life is a great belt to give you a good bit of additional damage through a free aura. Then when you are low life, you'll eventually be able to put on Undying Faith or craft past Undying Faith even. Depending on your investment level, I'm looking at Israfel's Laws or Israfel's The Body Armor, deciding how I'm going to take the character from here. Helmet wise, I played with Siren's Foresight or Siren's something first. Siren's, I want to say Foresight, but I might be wrong. It's a hat that gave you a curse on hit or curse on aura at first. Then I replaced it with Opening Heart. And then you're seeing the Surging Inspiration gameplay, which Surging Inspiration was a literal over 3 times damage upgrade for this character. So it is definitely a critical item if you want to improve this character to the moon. But Sirens and Opening Heart are both fantastic, like low budget options. Keep that in mind, right? You're allowed to have low budget options that you then escalate into higher budget options. Otherwise, I don't have a whole lot I want to talk about the character in detail or anything, because I think that the actual build code will show you a lot of my actual stat priorities, especially in giving you the understanding that crit is super important. Again, much like I said in my Selena video, actually, your resistances are not nearly as important as you think they are, especially if you're not in like 8-2s and up. You can just exist at like 40-50% resistances instead, but then actually scale the fuck out of some crit to really like get your damage up there. One last thing about this skill is that it does use the new Chain Lightning like Noble support, or both supports actually, Noble and Magnificent. There are 2 pairs for Chain Lightning. We use Web of Lightning and Merge. Web of Lightning changes it from 1 CL that chains a bunch of times to several CLs that chain once, and the number of CLs is based on the amount of jumps that you have. So I believe my character has 10 jumps total, which means that I shoot 11 Chain Lightnings that then all chain once. And then you pair this with the 5th support Merge, that will then allow you to put all of those chain lightnings on one target. If they exist, they will prioritize trying to spread out. But if they're only in range of the one target, and that's where the single target comes from. That's the insane scaling. It's why you've scaled so many jumps. It's much like Arc in that regard, where you do just gain a ton of damage for having like jump scaling. Then, as far as why Yuga scales incredibly well with just general cast speed scaling and spell burst. As you're seeing, it also allows me to get around potential mana problems that I would have with this character. So, that's another very important thing there. My Yuga's cast on cast speed on your cast speed. So cast speed scaling is very important, as well as spell burst stuff, or again, surging inspiration for really getting those stacks back faster, etc. And I feel like the rest of the character is pretty self-explanatory. This has been a very long video. I might make a more detailed guide. If I make a detailed guide about this character at any point, it'll be decently deep down in the future. I mostly wanted to make the video to actually talk about the state of the game, but then I figured I should also give you a little bit of information about the character that you're seeing, as well as the ability to actually like just look at my character and see how it's put together. If you have any questions or any feedback, again, about either the video or the topic of the video or the character, whatever it may be, drop those in the comment section down below. Like and subscribe if you find this video particularly helpful. If you want to connect with me outside of these videos, I do have a Twitch and a Discord in the description. You can check me out there. I've been streaming more regularly. Finally, it's starting to really click for me. And then, of course, I always check my Discord. So if you guys are messaging me there, I will see you. All that good stuff. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.